Clubhouse.
This is Stef.
This is Paul.
Hey, it's Sheila.
Welcome back, Sheila.
Welcome back, Sheila.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to take a little hiatus, but, Yellowstone called and I had to answer.
You just couldn't stay away.
I had to answer the, I don't know, what are they?
Dinner
What do
bell?
they ring out there in the bunkhouse? Dinner bell? Dinner bell, yeah. I was actually, Gator is what popped into my head. I was like, is dinner bell appropriate? So, yeah,
had to
the
come
cow
running.
mooed and I called.
Good. We're happy you're back.
So I'm going to apologize up front. I've been also quite sick. My voice, I usually apologize for the sound of my voice, but I'm really going to apologize for the sound of my voice on this one. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I couldn't miss any more.
I know it. You've been keeping up with the episodes.
I have. I was even so disciplined that I watched the first half of this season because as I listened to your podcast, the first two that you guys did, it was January of 2023 and we're knocking on the door of January 2025. So I was a little vacant when it came to what happened.
It has been
Duttons.
a while. Yeah. We needed to do some. It's surprising how much when you start talking about it, you're like, oh, yeah. And then this happened. You remember all the things that we've been talking about for years, Sheila.
The crazy came rushing back.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Well, we've been doing our best without you. Hopefully, we've done an honorable showing of the podcast without Sheila.
It's been wonderful. It's really weird to listen to a Yellowstone podcast and me not be a part of it. So I was like, okay, personal life, get your life in order here and catch up to what's happening. So
you just couldn't bear it.
Couldn't bear it. And I was actually glad I sat out last episode because wow, did I hate that one.
Yeah. Well, that's what Paul and I were just saying. Like, for one that we didn't really like that much, we sure talked a lot about it. We had a lot to say. Yeah.
That happens.
Mm-hmm.
This was a much more likable episode for me.
Yes. I feel like we're back to the Yellowstone, dramatic explosions that we needed. Yeah. Which is what we just said last episode. We're like, he does kind of lead us down sometimes a few episodes that are what you would call boring, if you could call that, if you could say that about Yellowstone. And then he brings us the next episode, some sort of massive, dramatic explosion type thing. So here we are. We got what we asked for.
We fed right into the formula. We really did.
Yep.
Well, anybody have any favorite parts or lines from this past episode?
I don't know. John, I didn't know if I needed to see his death. I mean, for the Yellowstone shock and awe, I appreciated it. But in terms of just being a fan of the show for this long, it was really gut-wrenching for me to see that. So it wasn't really a favorite part, but it was definitely a dramatic moment that for me is probably in the top 5 dramatic moments of this show.
Well, okay, let's dig into that moment. In our preparation documents, you wondered if we needed that scene or not. And it does make me question the strategy for giving us information this season. Like in episode 9/1, it was revealed right away that Sarah set this whole thing up.
Right.
Even though, as Steph and I have discussed, we think he was talking about Beth, killing Beth in that conversation.
Well, I did go back and watch, and they talked about offing Beth.
Yeah.
Between the two of them.
So you just kind of fudge it a little bit and transfer it to John, I suppose, and just keep rolling. But giving us all that information up front unwrapped the present, I thought. There could have been some amount of suspense where we were strung along a little bit more. And here we are again being given, well, this is what it looked like.
Yeah.
And I know there's only 6 episodes, so maybe that's makes a lot of sense. It'll hopefully all make sense in 3 more episodes.
Yeah. I think seeing John's death really added to, though, the storyline of like Kayce needing to investigate for himself and see it for himself and sort of open up that dialogue that this wasn't a suicide. I mean, it had to go there in terms of like the media needed to recognize that in order for there to be more of an investigation. Like it kind of needed to be there, I think, just so you understood what Kayce was looking for, why he knew what to look for. I don't know.
Well, it wasn't outlandish for Yellowstone, right?
Yeah. It just sucked because we've seen these types of things from Yellowstone. We've just never seen it for the characters that we actually cared about, right?
Well, it did let us know that he never had a chance.
Yeah.
we've seen him put up a pretty good fight in other situations, but asleep,
Yeah.
3 guys using that military style snatch and grab routine that Kayce described.
And demonstrated scarily.
Right.
Yeah.
At least we know that he never had a chance out of that jam.
Mm-hmm.
I just have another
Yeah.
question. I don't know.
Sure.
I feel that the overcomplicating of the gun.
The gun that John gave to Kayce,
That was in
that
the
is
last-
technically John's gun that he keeps in the livestock
away.
office, wherever that is.
Right.
Right, in some other city with cameras and its own security.
Yeah.
So I had a question, I guess, in terms of if we're talking about the gun that was used and we see how John is assassinated, really, for lack of a better term. Was it necessary for the gun to be John's gun from the Livestock Association in a safe with security? Is this the undoing?
I think it was necessary for it to be John's gun, right?
For a suicide,
For
yeah.
a suicide, yes. But why wouldn't he have a gun in his governor's mansion under the mattress? So I agree with you. Why did it need to be that gun? Why?
Yeah, like that complicated.
But this is a company, you're assuming a company, that's done this before. This is their profession. They have worked out the kinks, I'm sure. So there had to be a reason. There had to be a valid process, and they knew what they were doing when they went into the livestock office to get that specific gun. It wasn't just a random idea that they're like, oh, I don't know, let's go get that one. Like, they thought this out, obviously, right? So there has to be a bigger reason for it.
This feels sloppy to me.
It's
If
just
they're such a
convoluting the
professional-
story. Like, it's just unnecessary details. Is that what you're saying?
Unless
Yeah, go
plot-wise,
ahead.
it gives us a chance to see who did it.
Yeah.
Because Steph and I talked about the big guy that Kayce called last episode, who
Yeah, he's a scary dude.
but he's also just getting back from a job in which he's dressed just like the guys
Right.
that went and took care of John. What?
Weird.
Yeah.
And he hasn't, obviously he's a company guy, so he would have information on this, but do you think he might be somebody involved in this?
I'm starting to.
I think that's what he's hinting at.
I'm starting to, yeah.
And
Because he says you don't want to poke around at this.
okay, because I don't know, I
That
didn't
would
get
be a little
that.
convenient for that to be the truth,
It would.
right?
It
Like,
would. Of
yeah.
all the hitmen and
Yeah, and all of the land.
right.
Right? Or in all the world, really, because this seems like a global operation. But I mean, the guy also didn't give any indication that this was his job, I guess.
No, but
Okay.
he's saying.
Well, but
Discretion is the better part of valor, I guess.
He did look like private military contractor kind of guy.
Oh, 100% paramilitary, yes.
So he's coming back from work the same night that work was done.
Work. Oh my God, Paul, you just said that so casually. Work.
Work was done.
Yeah, like he just hung up the office jacket and,
Yep. Just punched in, punched out. So what I'm getting at though is, what if we see that guy on the camera?
Oh, because then the preview shows Kayce in the back of the car. He's like, I know what you did, but who's in the car?
But they don't tell us, right?
Yeah, okay. That would be so interesting.
It would be, because I don't think that's Jamie.
No, it didn't. It didn't feel like. I don't know why. Why does it not feel like Jamie's car? I don't know, but it didn't.
That image made it look like whoever was sitting there was wearing glasses, but it might have been sunglasses because there's a glare in the corner that moves with the
You
head.
guys are so specific.
Yeah. But I don't think that's Jamie's car.
That would be
Isn't that what
interesting.
they pay us for, Steph, to be specific?
I know it is. That's why we're good at this, because we notice every little detail.
And this is why these all run like an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
So I guess where we landed on the necessity of the assassination, maybe some people were going to want to know.
Yeah, I think.
And then the way that it jives so well with Kayce's expertise, in one way it lets us know Kayce knows what he's talking about. On the other hand, if they didn't show it to us, it might have been more dramatic to have Kayce be freaking right without necessarily spoon feeding it to us.
That would have been harder to prove, I guess.
Yes.
So this is just
It's one of those things.
visually.
The audience knows what that Emmy should be looking for, and we know that she's dragging her feet.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned in my easy softball prediction for this week was she wasn't going to want to look for stuff. She's going to say, oh, what's this? And then what does she do? That was so Kayce in alpha mode, you know, with the detective. And
he switched modes like we talked about last time, and he was there to get business done. I love it. And he was like, I don't understand what's more important on your desk than, the governor's death. I loved it. And she was like rolling her eyes. Like,
she was.
Fine.
She was.
She did. She rolled her eyes at him.
Before we get to Kayce, what else do we want to talk about with that? Any favorite stuff type elements or big fat questions that we have before we dive into our characters?
The only thing that really was left dangling for me is the whole Linnell and Clara thing. Like, I really liked how that carrot was strung out for us and just left to hold there. Like, well, you're an unemployed citizen at the moment with confidential knowledge. I just want to know how rogue Clara's going to go. And I just really loved how it was played out in this episode.
She didn't make the previews that I recall. At least I didn't put it in my notes that she did. So it did make me wonder, did she understand what Linnell meant for her to do?
It kind of made me wonder a little bit too. Like, she's like, oh, okay.
She doesn't mean go to the paper. She means go to Beth and Kayce, right?
It was a little open-ended, right? She's like, so wink, wink, you know what to do, right?
Yes,
and she was like,
I took it as tell the Duttons what's up so they have a second to not get caught completely flat-footed, but
I did get the feeling that Linnell is still sort of protective over John and and what he wanted, right? Like she knows logically like things are going to change, but I think when Jamie is explaining like all of the legality of things and we could do this and she had this like horrified look on her face, like she looked disgusted at him. And I think it's because of her, I don't know if you would call it love for John. I mean, they were in a quote unquote relationship at some point, whatever you want to call that. So, she's got some connection to him other than, governor to senator type friendship. So I think underneath it all, she still feels that like level of care and protection over John.
You think that's what's motivating her?
If she was suggesting to go to Kayce and Beth to get ahead of it and like help them out, then yeah, that's what I think her motivation was.
Because in the office, she makes the defense about basically pricing out the locals if they turn it into Jackson Hole.
Yeah.
And that's a very good legal argument, business kind of argument. But I think that's also smokescreen for that she doesn't want to see John's family legacy get destroyed.
Well, also when somebody dies, no matter what the circumstance, I mean, and this was obviously very, very tragic, your perception of people immediately changes, right? So often you might kind of gloss over some of the
flaws,
unseemly parts,
the
and you might just, all of those. And you might just want to focus on the legacy. You want to focus on the good memories and things like that. But in this case, she is also looking out for the goodwill of Montana. She's already accepted the fact that John undid what she put in place while she was governor, and she seems to be okay with that. But the rest of the dealings in the new governor's office, she was just not here for. And I think part of it is the devotion to John. I'm not going to say love because politics makes for very strange bedfellows oftentimes. But at the same time, there were feelings there. I think she genuinely liked him, even though he genuinely frustrated her. So I think she was also just looking out for his legacy and, the legacy of the governorship. She was a governor. There's a lot to that. But I also think that immediately once his body hit the floor, her perception of him changed.
This did seem to be an episode for people who, for reasons they may not even understand themselves, had an admiration for John to come out of the woodwork. Like Linnell, Clara, Rainwater, all finding ways to position themselves to support whatever it is the Duttons are going to do next.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I agree. It's like you didn't get to say goodbye or whatever. So then a lot of times people feel like they have to somehow reconnect to that family and say like, oh, well, I still, I respected him or whatever. So, they're
not Duttons, but they've all been on the land. Like Clara was there. Linnell did several overnights. And Rainwater has always coveted the land.
Yeah.
I think that also binds them together is maybe not approving of John exactly, but still admiring his tenacity and just understanding why he loved the place.
Yeah, exactly.
But we also got to hear Rainwater say this.
It is a snake that speaks from its tail, so it may save its mouth for striking.
That is a great line.
Yeah.
Yes.
I may find myself using that to describe people I know in the near future.
Yikes.
You mean at Thanksgiving dinner? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
You both noticed the Dutton vibe.
Dutton vibe.
Right.
I don't know what
I
to
don't know if
call
that's a good thing.
It's like, did you see the Justice League? Superman dies and it just sends out this wave that causes all these problems throughout the world. Maybe it's just like that.
Oh, nice visual.
Mm-hmm.
He is
I was thinking
Superman.
like an EMP from like
Yes.
GoldenEye.
Or Ocean's 11.
Yeah, something like that. It was just like a little like shockwave that went out,
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
Duttons. But somehow Jamie didn't get it.
I did notice that, yes.
Good call. Now,
Spoiler alert, he's not a Dutton.
Right?
well, have we ever, we've noticed that Kayce has this whatever.
Premonition?
Yeah.
Or like...
some other
He's
ability.
definitely in touch with a more spiritual world.
Yes.
Okay.
More
the
so
Vision
than, say,
Quest
Beth.
wouldn't have worked if he wasn't. He's got the
Exactly.
wolves that keep showing up in his life. But have we seen Beth with anything like that?
No, I don't think so.
She just has a real cunning intuitive. That's been her strength.
I mean,
to
yeah,
have
she's
some
intuitive,
sort of-
but I don't think we've ever seen her like know that something bad has happened, or whatever, like know what someone else is thinking or like in
No,
the
I
moment.
haven't.
So I don't feel like she's that connected to her emotions.
Maybe it had to be this strong
yes,
in order
exactly.
to reach her.
Yeah.
Maybe
Like she's always to me been a chess player, right? She's always, 4 or 5 moves ahead of whoever she's playing with. This was obviously an earth-shattering event, so I think this woke up whatever humanity maybe she has left in her.
Well, we were saying last time she's becoming a little bit more human, right? Since being with Rip. So I think we could give her that.
Well, speaking of Beth, in writing TV episodes, and if you ever listen to writers and producers describe a season or an episode, they'll refer to screen time as servicing a character, right? It's a combination of screen time and what their character even does in that episode, if it even matters, or if they're just kind of there on screen. And that often has to be a balance so that every character can move forward in the plot. But also sometimes it's intentionally out of balance when they need to focus on what it is one character is doing. And for me, and I wonder if you guys agree, it seemed like Beth's big personality had to step back in this episode to make room for Kayce to step forward.
Okay.
I like that notion because in most of the scenes in Yellowstone, we've rarely seen Beth and Kayce together. They really haven't interacted much together.
Right.
Just short-lived dinners.
Right.
Yes, yes. There's not been a lot of direct contact with them. Whereas you can, Stef, Paul, and I, we can count off, the number of Jamie and Beth interactions.
Yeah.
So I think this is an interesting dynamic between them in allowing, to Beth to shrink down a little bit and allow Kayce's. This is where he's got the skills. He's got real world experience in a world that she doesn't know a lot about. This is where they need his skills more so than hers at this point. So I think she's also being a little humbled to kind of know what she doesn't know and allow him to do what he needs to do here.
Right.
I don't think she would have been this mature 2 seasons ago.
I was kind of wondering if it might be Beth, Clara, and Linnell that have to do whatever can be done to save the ranch on paper.
Right.
Whatever that equals. If there's anyone on Team Dutton that has the skills to do it, it's got to be those 3 at this point.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, because sort of in the past, that person would have been Jamie that they would have brought in for that. So
Yeah.
he's no longer on Team Dutton.
He's no longer part of team government.
Right?
I wanted to circle us back if we could before we get too much further into the Duttons and, the Jamie stuff, because that's a lot. I wanted to ask you about the new governor and what did he sniff out in that meeting with Jamie and Linnell? Like, what did he sniff out between that conversation that he took the action that he did later on in this episode with Jamie being recused.
So he was Team Jamie for a second there, and then all of a sudden he's like, fuck that guy.
It seemed that way to me. It seemed that he was looking forward to having Jamie help navigate these next few days, and he did a 180 real fast.
I think he picked up on the fact that Jamie is going to sort of finagle this, that it ends up in the best benefit of the Dutton Ranch, right? He's still going to try to get everyone sort of happy on board with the new development and, just reinstate the land lease and then this can be done. But ultimately, it still kind of benefits the Duttons more than it benefits the state, right? Because he was like, or you could buy it for, however many $1 billion you said, pay the taxes. And then the governor's like, well, why would I do that? So I think he kind of sniffed out that Jamie was going to sort of tell him the truth or tell him what it could be or should be, but also in a way that leans to benefiting the Dutton Ranch instead of benefiting the state.
He did make that line where he said, I am obligated to try to protect the ranch, or whatever the line was.
So I think that's where he turned and was like, oh, okay, well, you're not going to tell me like what's best for me as the governor. You're going to tell me what's best for you, basically.
He basically did the rainwater quote.
It is a snake that speaks from its tail, so it may save its mouth for striking.
I think that reference could be applied to Jamie as well in this situation.
Yeah. Well, I think Linnell picking up on the whole eminent domain, and she's like, wait, why does this not apply here? It's different, It just, I think it rubbed her the wrong way too. I think she felt, the look on her face too, she was just sort of seemed disgusted with him. Like we said, I think there was a little underlying level of her trying to sort of preserve what John wanted, but at the same time, like, why would you say this one day and now you're saying something different?
That conversation to me on rewatching felt pretty weird because for most of the conversation, Jamie tried to propose selling, some version of selling some land.
Right.
And then at the very end, he says, well, my siblings will never sell, so we might have to take it. Why'd you say that? What do you mean we take it? A second ago, you were like, will the state pay fair market value? But until then, he was trying to still do right by the ranch as best as Jamie thinks he knows how. And then he says, take it. There's only one thing that take it means when it comes to the government, eminent domain.
So I think all of that just made the governor sit back and just be like, I can't
Something
trust
smells
this guy.
fishy here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now we have a new enemy.
Yeah.
Lloyd and Rip were looking for someone to fight, right?
Yeah. And they're bored.
And they're bored. All right, so let's switch gears and talk about Rip and Beth and seeing them hanging out in Texas.
In our last podcast, Stef, you were saying that it was hard to really pin down the timing of what was happening when. And I thought I understood it since this turned out to be the night that John was killed.
I know. I thought it was like 6 weeks ago.
I thought it was too.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's okay that it's not, completely understandable in the timeline, but maybe it's not that important to the show. But
I just,
it's just weird.
I hate not knowing where I'm at.
Yeah.
That's all.
It was confusing. It was confusing enough, honestly, for me to go back and rewatch the first 2 episodes just to make sure I didn't miss a time jump.
Yeah, because, and she's already saying, I can't do this for a year, but has it only been 6? I'm confused. But anyway, the point is,
right,
she doesn't want to be without him. And he is just blatantly, I'm not leaving the cows. It's my job. Sorry. So I think, there's sort of a decision there. Like, how long is he going to have to be in Texas? I like that he brought up the fact, like, maybe we could just rent a little house and we sort of camp here for a while.
Yeah.
So I liked that idea. I liked that she just wants to be with him.
Well, Sheila, you've been listening to our podcasts and hearing our theories. Do you agree that this, or not, that this all is leading up to a nice segue to get whatever remains of the Dutton apparatus moved down to Texas?
I do. I think seeing him cowboying in a completely different environment and knowing it's Texas and knowing what we know, as the fourth wall of knowing that, the 4 6s is a thing and they want to do this as a show, it does make sense that one of the things that survives, and this is what you guys were talking about at some point, the cattle might be the legacy. So I think this is a nice way to set it up. If the Yellowstone goes away, that Rip can continue to cowboy, even though we last episode had the doom and gloom of 30 years. How many times last episode did we hear in 30 years no one's going to be doing your job?
Yeah, right.
Please. Sorry, I hate.
So
the
I
hatred
had
for that
this
episode
really
is coming through.
sort of sad thought. It kind of plays in more if we were going to just talk about Beth, but she's got a lot of decisions to make, right? As we're going to talk about in a few other conversations, but she has to decide what to do with the assets of the Dutton Ranch, which includes the cows.
Yeah.
And she mentioned the really expensive horses.
Mm-hmm.
So it made me really sad to think about the fact that she's got to make a decision to sell her husband's livelihood and his only way of life, or keep it just for him and move it to I was like, oh no,
I
this
didn't
is
even think of that.
bad. This is not good choice to have to make.
Oh, that's
I mean, she's got to.
death.
I know.
Oh, that's awful.
I know, right? It just hit me. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. She's got to sell off the ranch or somehow keep part of it. But this is Rip's whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And she's
And
married to
Carter.
him. And is she going to sell his cows? And then he's like, what the hell, man? I thought you loved me. And she's like, but it's for the money, baby. I don't know. It just isn't a good choice. It's terrible.
Wow.
I didn't even think of that angle, but I think you're right.
Makes me sad.
They're all going to look to Beth to figure this out.
Yeah. What if
Yeah.
she sells his life? She wouldn't do that to him, but she has to for the money to pay the taxes. Oh my gosh. It's a lot.
I'm going to need a number on this tax because they keep talking about it.
I
They're like,
know.
all right, come on, I got you a check already. Come on.
I don't know. It made me really sad. So the thought that maybe some of their horses and some of their cows now live in Texas, and Beth's not tied to Montana at some point, right? At some point in the near future, she's not going to care whether she lives in this state or that state. So maybe she just becomes a Texan and they live happily ever after.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Things will just calm right down
Right?
wherever they go.
Oh, right, because chaos doesn't follow her.
No, never.
I
Yeah.
never thought of that.
Yeah.
Never
Well,
thought of that.
She's got to
Her-
keep at least a few cows for him.
Got to chase something.
Oh my gosh.
But I mean, Steph, that's a really, really valid point because now there's nothing tying her to Montana. Her dad was it. Her dad was her whole world. And Rip, obviously.
Well,
but,
now
you know,
Rip is,
Rip
so-
lived in Dad's world.
What are they going to do? But I don't know. I was feeling like this might, I don't know if we're going to see that choice play out on TV, but in sort of what you would like to call real life, it's going to have to happen, right? She's going to have to decide what to do with his job, basically.
There is no preserving this place. There is prolonging its collapse.
She's so dramatic.
Yeah.
But she's also been saying this for
The whole
overseas.
time.
But she's not
Yeah.
wrong,
Yeah.
It's it's a lot.
And when they talk like that, and the previous episode we have cowboys itching for a fight. I don't know. I don't see them getting in a fight with the state, but I don't know. It's on the table. It's
Yeah.
somewhere on the table. Someone coming to change the locks on
Yeah.
the bunkhouse is going to have a rough time that day.
Yeah, that's true. That's so funny.
All right. So in talking with Rainwater, Beth does what I didn't actually expect her to do, which was say what she was thinking with the experiential hospitality. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been to any place like that?
You mean like going to stay on a dude ranch? Okay.
It's a customer-focused strategy that aims to create a memorable experience for guests.
Exactly.
That
Would-
is the AI overview.
That is a little open-ended. I mean, Motel 6 might say the same exact thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I would say something with the Yellowstone barn might be a little more enthralling.
You could have your meals at the chuck wagon with Gator.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gator,
Go
stay
fly
away from the
fishing
Vaseline.
with Tate down by the creek.
Yeah, after Gator and the Vaseline last episode, I'm gonna pass on Gator's food. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
What was your question, Paul, around this? Could her idea of partnering for experiential hospitality be
Yeah.
the
I
only
mean,
viable solution?
you guys think, I mean, is it even too late to try to make this happen? She wasn't really given a lot of time with John to fully flesh out those ideas, even though she's had them all along. She wanted to rent the place out for weddings and stuff.
Well, she's always had like the business sense about it. Like you could be selling this and making money and profiting off of this, but you just care about keeping it whole. But okay, that's what we'll do. So she's always had that. Like there's other options we could do here. It feels a little too late when they're in the governor's office saying they're instating eminent domain. It feels a little too late.
Now, that's not like a rubber stamp that just happens, but I mean,
yeah.
Once that's, I guess, on the table for your property, that's like it. You know, that's all you're focused on until either it goes away or it's done.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very big deal.
But it also takes years.
Does it? This is just a thought I had. I have no idea how you donate land, but couldn't she donate this national, preserve land to the reservation and then it's, protected? Or is it too late now that there's eminent domain? Like, does eminent domain trump reservation?
Well, I think
conservation type thing?
Maybe it depends who gets their paperwork in first.
Exactly. I thought that's where that conversation could go between
that's what I was thinking
Rainwater and Beth is like, well, what if I give it to you and then you somehow, work this out with me or whatever?
They kind of walked up to that
he
line.
Was asking. He was basically asking, like, can you just give it to me because I can't buy it?
Well, and it sounds like he's run out of clout with his own people.
Yeah.
So even if he could figure out a way to say finance it or something, he doesn't have the pull anymore to do it. So he's just, as a guy running an Indian reservation who knows what dealing with the government is like, that I think his main motivation there's actually compassion. Mm-hmm. It'd be great if they threw in the ranch, but
I mean, it sounded like that's where he was asking for. And so what is her main goal in all this? So I could see that happening too.
Well, that bookend, like we talked about with the agreement with the original natives who ran the area until James Dutton showed up. Something about several generations, again, don't quote me, 7 or 8, something like that, until it's supposed to seed back to them somehow. So this could be it. This could be the way that all of that gets taken care of.
Well, if she didn't want to see it torn apart piece by piece.
Yeah.
And she just wanted to sort of keep it from becoming Bozeman or, one of those other tourist cities, then this is what she could do with it. Isn't this why people donate those really expensive diamond 40-carat necklaces to the museum? So it just sits in a plaque with a light on it and
right. Yeah.
No one can touch it.
24 hours security.
Yeah.
I think this is probably the closest thing. If Beth wants to keep the ranch whole, it just doesn't become a ranch anymore, it just becomes land. Giving it back to Broken Rock is probably the closest thing to that conservation easement as well. Mm-hmm. But this feels more hands off, right? Because now you've got federal government, you've got Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Mm-hmm. You mean she could just give it away and walk away and not deal with it?
I don't know if she's going to give it away, but I think there's going to be some sort of agreement between possibly her and Rainwater to protect it in some way.
Another bookend, now that you bring that up, would be the initial man who made the agreement with James, right? He just wanted access to the land because he needed to bury
a family
member, right? And he wanted access to be able to come back.
Yes.
Well, where are all the Duttons buried?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
On the land.
On that same land.
Yeah. Another nice little dovetail there.
And the 7th generation is a Dutton and a Broken Rock tribe member.
What?
Yeah. I mean, we figured it out.
We're so good.
That's it. Don't have to watch anymore. We figured it out.
Taylor Sheridan should just come talk to us.
Yep. Beth, like I said, she kind of took kind of a back seat in this one. She's a little beaten in this one.
Yeah, she's definitely down.
That's a fair
she's
statement.
Definitely sad and not saying a whole lot.
Mm-mm. She doesn't even have like I don't know.
There was no pithy quip,
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is only a
Since
couple
given-
of days.
Right.
Yeah, given what's happened and the humanizing of Beth over the last couple of seasons, it's really sad to say, but I feel like it's leading her to this point where she can behave normally in this type of situation. Sorry, like that's mean, I know, but it's true.
Mean but true.
We didn't get much Rip this episode.
No.
Just
No.
duty.
Yeah.
His strong adherence and sense of duty comes through in the moment that we got with Rip. That's about it.
I thought it was kind of funny that he's just like, listen, no more surprises. I've got work to do. And then he sort of circles back with, but thank you. That was nice. You know, like, don't be mad. I just mean.
There's a couple of scenes in the preview for Rip, you know, like throwing a glass in the fireplace, but not a lot for Rip. It looks more like Rip's frustrated next
Yeah.
episode.
But why do you think he told her not to come back? Like, no more surprising.
I think it's because he's the boss until she gets there, and he wants to
Yeah.
maintain that bossness without giving up anything.
Yeah, because he didn't even get to argue with her standing in front of all the cowboys.
Right.
He was like, oh, okay. So it just made him look weak. He's not a man in charge.
He has a persona,
Yeah.
you know, and he's aware of the authority that he carries, and his own personal sense of, you know, work ethic and responsibility are pretty
Yeah, you don't
big.
just take a day off to go lay in a hotel bed all day. You know, he doesn't.
No, not, I mean,
There's the work to do.
agreeing that if they think it through and rent a house, he can agree to that. That's actually kind of a big fat step from the guy. No, teepees all the way. We're all team teepee here.
That's funny.
In our notes, someone just listed, well, if they move the ranch, what happens to the brand?
So Rip knows that John is dead. And
Yes.
I can't even imagine the emotional turmoil in a man who never left Montana until 6 weeks ago to now have his patriarch die. But now out in the plains of Texas, him and his band o' cowboys, does he tell them about John? They have no other way of finding out. And if they find out, what happens to the brand? What happens to the, sorry, there's a load of questions around this. What happens to the brand if the Yellowstone fails and that promise? So
It's interesting
unpack
because
that as you will.
Sarah said when the man who built the legacy dies, no one cares about the name anymore.
Hmm.
I mean, those weren't her exact words, but that was her.
She was, you know, trying to stick it to Jamie right then. But yeah.
She's saying like no one cares that that's your name once the person sort of
Yep.
holding up that name is gone. So I don't know. That's a good question, Sheila. It sort of loses its power, doesn't it?
Totally. Yeah.
Just to counterpoint, there's been 6 Duttons prior that have risen and fallen, and the ranch is still endured, right? So there is some argument there that not necessarily the name loses its luster, but does that stand in the 21st century?
Yeah.
Are we such empire builders that it's man dependent, or is there something more there? Is there something enduring about the brand, about the ranch, about the cattle, the product, whatever it is? It doesn't have to be a question for now to be answered, but it's just like a lingering thought. Like, what happens after?
I was always also wondering like why we haven't had this conversation that this is now Kayce's ranch, right? We've skipped from John to does Tate want it? Like we didn't even discuss that this is
Well, that's the way the will was set up.
the will. Okay. It
Yeah.
has nothing to do with Kayce?
No, it's Kayce is the executor, I guess. So he's
He
ostensibly.
doesn't inherit anything from. Yeah, he should.
They didn't really get into the details about individual like assets and
Mhm.
accounts and stuff like that. They just kind of called it the estate or something. I can't remember. But yeah, Tate was the primary. I
Okay.
think, did they
So
say
it just-
sole beneficiary?
I think he was the sole beneficiary.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't remember that. That makes sense. I was just wondering why in this sort of discussions they've been having about the future of the ranch, they haven't even discussed whether it was Kayce's role to step up and become,
Mhm.
the lead Dutton. So
Just there to
Tate.
help Tate.
Okay.
Tate's too young
Yeah.
to inherit that. So that's where Kayce does come in. But obviously, like we mentioned, Beth is the brains of this operation currently. I have to admit, talking about Kayce and Monica and Tate, that scene in East Camp in the ago time, I was starting to think, God, another mopping up the cabin scene. I mean, sheesh. Did you guys make anything more out of picture straightening? Or was that just like,
No, I think that was just
making a house a home?
how husbands and wives interact.
Yeah, okay.
And
Yeah.
just letting them get back to what normal is in this place.
Yeah. I think that we
Right.
saw that whole, scene at their East camp just to reiterate how happy they are in that moment, and that Monica's finally, she's so happy that she's crying and she's just thankful for everything.
Did you guys notice that both Monica and Rainwater referred to grandfather?
No, I didn't.
Grandfather was in her blessing,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
and Rainwater brought up his grandfather, and I think he meant in the spiritual sense, walking the lands of the Yellowstone.
I looked this up because it was something that it was weird to me that she said it and he said it. And I was like, I didn't think they meant their literal grandfather.
Me neither. No.
Yeah. So it's essentially like in the Christian faith, when we say father, we talk about a priest, we talk about a reverential figure. The priest could either be, we refer to the priest as father, but God is also the father. And in Native American traditions, grandfather is it's an elder male figure. So it's not necessarily like the actual person, but it's a term of reverence for the wise ones who came before.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Something having to do with ancestors, not
Yes,
literally
you ask them
your
for
dad's
spiritual
dad.
guidance. You ask them for benevolence in your daily life. So I like that she called on grandfather in this place that is shared with both her white husband and her Native American tradition, right? So it's kind of a marrying of the two. And I feel like that might be the theme of this episode, guys, is the marrying of these two traditions. And I feel like we're walking backwards in time. We're walking back to where 1883 kind of started, I feel.
I think so. Continuing with that little dinner, I know that Tate is a teenager and he has done some really terrific acting in this show.
Yeah.
Like the trauma episodes and the sleeping under the bed, and
Yeah.
he's done a lot of good acting for a child actor. But then all of a sudden in this episode and the last one, he's like Lily from Modern Family.
Yeah.
What happened, kid? I mean, is it just that you're playing a teenage boy and so you're just supposed to be unemotional, disaffected?
I think
everyone's a bro. Is that it? Or are you suddenly a bad actor?
it just really sounds like he doesn't want to be there.
Right.
So either he's a really good actor
Right.
and
Maybe
it's coming
that's it.
off as he doesn't want to be there, or he really doesn't want to be there because his lines are being delivered so sort of
Get a
mechanically.
room.
Like, get a room, guys. It's like not even convincing. Like, come on.
Because he's done such an amazing job as a little kid,
Yeah. Maybe he hasn't had any other acting jobs since. Maybe he's a little rusty.
All right, I'm going to do a little devil's advocate here because we've talked about as a Pod Clubhouse gang at how the teenagers writing on this show has been so not teenager-like. Last season, when we first met Carter, we were talking about how he didn't sound like a teenager. He didn't sound like a 14-year-old. He was saying things like, discretion is the better part of valor. That become part of my lexicon because of this show. But we've critiqued that it doesn't always sound like an authentic teenager. And I think when we get authentic teenager, we're like, oh, we don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I hate that. Yeah.
Why
Like,
is
how
he so
dare you make him
obnoxious?
actually sound like a teenager?
I'll leave room for that. He's actually just doing a very good job playing a normal,
Annoyed teenager.
teenager.
That's so funny.
I mean, I think the notes here were really just be yourself. Your parents are at it and they're talking and you just want them to shut up. Give it to me.
It didn't quite feel genuine, but that's so funny that you referenced Lily. So funny. Oh my gosh.
We got that visit with Mo, who can help maybe sort out Vision Quest questions that remain. Do you think Kayce felt better after the "you'll know it when you see it" that Mo gave him about the Vision Quest and the choice he's going to have to make?
Maybe slightly, but he was like, well, the choice between the ranch and my family. And he goes, well, not much of a choice. He's like, yeah, I know. Like, obviously. So I don't know. I didn't feel like they really got deeper in that
Right.
conversation than what Kayce's already figured out. But also,
He's
it's
like,
always,
we both know what you're going to choose. And he's like, we do.
We do. Yeah, of course. But also, it is helpful to have someone sort of reaffirm you and be like, okay, yeah, you're thinking the right interpretation of this. But I don't know. That to me, that's sort of the only benefit that he could have gotten out of that is just camaraderie of someone agreeing with you and saying like, yeah, you're seeing it the right way.
Do you think Kayce already knows the outcome?
I don't.
No. I
He
think
just knows he has to make a decision?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he doesn't know what it will come down to.
Or what it's going to look like.
Yeah. I did like that Mo said, like, once you see it, you'll just know. And it won't be a hard choice at all.
So I think Kayce, and I think what's at stake here is Beth seriously going to ask Kayce what to do with like the different pastures and that? No, I don't think so. I think the stakes have got to be for Kayce's kind of gut level way of interpreting problems. It's got to be the highest stakes, not just the ranch, but lives and stuff like that. Really big deal kind of stuff. Maybe all of the people of the ranch and his family versus something else. You know, I'm not positive what that's going to look like, but I think it's going to be when he says you'll know it when you see it, or paraphrasing, it's going to be because
someone has to die.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I like what he said to Jamie. Like, I hope basically the, conversation at the end of that was, I hope you don't make me choose between you and.
Right.
So it's like, I hope I don't have to kill you. So, I mean, yeah, it might come down to someone's life. Probably Jamie's.
We talked quite a bit about Kayce and his new assertiveness. But I don't know, it's not new. I would say it's energized, activated assertiveness, especially with the medical examiner and getting that detective on speed dial every time you needed him. That was
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, in real life, people would want to just be like, well, we'll just, put it on the calendar for another time. And no.
We'll let you know when we get back from vacation next week.
Pretty much. I really enjoyed seeing push through and just know what he wants and how to get there. Yeah.
I love that he says, who doesn't need a warrant?
Right.
Fish and wildlife.
And me.
And me.
Well, this is really where Kayce's skill set has the opportunity to cut through a lot of the nonsense. I feel like Beth doesn't know where she's going right now in terms of next steps. She just knows that the collapse is coming. Mm-hmm. But Kayce has some actionable skills and contacts that can give context to what's happening, change the direction of the investigation, and lead them forward. I feel like this is the vision that was laid out for him, that he saw. He's the future of whatever's next. And he's going to be the only one. Well, he's going to
lead it.
Well, he's going to be the only one who can direct it, let's say.
Yeah, direct it.
I feel like Beth is out of her realm at this point because this is just headed in a direction that she doesn't know well. And Jamie's the enemy. So it's really it's him, and he's got to protect his family. What more noble cause does he have to now step up? And I like Paul's words, is assertiveness, activated assertiveness. But I feel like this is the path that he was put on with this quest, that he just didn't know the details yet.
When I have those moments where I think, why did Taylor write it like that? Then I remember he made Kayce livestock commissioner 2 seasons ago. He set him up to have this
particular spot.
Authority,
yeah.
And made him a Navy SEAL and all these other things that built up to, it wasn't sudden. He had the exact right skills for the stuff that he needs to be doing right now. He's not an investigator, but he does know the investigators, and they seem to like him and respect him, so they are willing to work with him.
And he knows when something is real shady.
Yeah. So when I think about those moments where I'm like, why did you write it like this? Then I remember he's done a pretty good job making certain things play out in a very meaningful way. Kevin Costner quitting the show notwithstanding, so far he's painting himself out of that corner pretty okay with things that make sense. One moment of potential foreshadowing, I just want to draw everybody's attention to that gun in the glove compartment. I know that walking into the Capitol building, it's probably a good idea. It's less hassle.
Yeah.
Just to leave your gun
Put your
behind.
gun in the car.
Especially if you're going to go beat up your brother. Things might get out of hand, but I'm just thinking that gun in the glove compartment, something about that is just going to be like, I need that gun right now. I think we're going to see that gun pop up again. No questions for the team about it. Just keep an eye on it. Mm-hmm. Just remember, he's got that gun in there if he ever needs it.
I am happy to see that he went to look Jamie in the eye.
Finally got there.
Finally got there. And that he's having Beth tell him in his ear, this is Jamie, this is Jamie. He's a horrible person. He's trash. He's evil. And so I liked that we finally got to see these two look each other in the eye. And I liked that Jamie defended himself finally, because he is innocent-ish, right? He didn't actually execute it. He didn't pay the money. He didn't call Grant. He didn't do those things. You know, he could claim like, I didn't do this and still have some conviction to it, right? Which is what he did. And I appreciated that he finally said those words. And I thought it was really heartfelt that he's like, I love you. Like, I wouldn't choose to do this to you. Like, I wouldn't hurt you like this. You know, there's probably a level of Jamie that's a different, you know, his motivation was there for that. But he does love Kayce, I think. And that I liked him sort of pleading his case here and looking him in the eye and saying, like, I wouldn't want to do that to you. So I'm happy that Kayce showed up. I'm happy that he threw him to the floor. I'm happy that Jamie said, like, wait, I promise. Like, it wasn't me. Just for the sake of defending yourself. Like, because I didn't like when he didn't even say anything to Beth. And he looked so guilty and he looked so cowardly.
Well, Stef, you and I, going back, you know, all the seasons that we've covered, there's a different relationship between Kayce and Jamie this whole time.
And I've always kind of had this with Jamie. Like, I do like when he defends himself. And then he always disappoints us and acts cowardly and does the wrong thing. And then we hate him for it. But I always sort of root for him at some level that, like, he just has had, like, a shitty life handed to him with all of these issues and the way his dad treated him and the way it's not really his dad and all of, like, I think I've sort of felt sorry for him all along. And so when something sort of happens to him, I feel bad for him. And then when he does something, I don't like him. And then so he evokes a lot of emotion for me, I think. I think he's just, I don't know. I think I like him as a character more than most Yellowstone fans do.
He has all those qualities that you just mentioned. He's intelligent and he can make a well-reasoned argument. He has been a big asset to the family in the past.
I think he wanted to be, like, he intends to be an asset. He just never does it right.
Well, I mean, for a long time he did. He did a very good job of being the lawyer for the ranch, but then he got his own sort of ego in the way, which people will do. But you're right. He's a very frustrating character because he is likable in some ways. If there's a persona of Jamie that if you just met him casually, you might actually like the guy.
Yeah.
If you didn't have to see everything that he did.
Yeah.
You know?
He just doesn't have a way to, like, stand on his own. He's always being influenced by someone. And we always wish that he had that sort of backbone that he doesn't have. But
well, Jamie, he strikes hard and then he has, you know, buyer's remorse afterwards. And he always needs somebody to help him clean up his mess.
Well, to that end, I mean, in this episode, with the death of Sarah, there is no way that Market Equities is going to be so chummy with him now, right? And plus, without his influence over the deal, if he is forced to recuse himself, he's of no use to them anymore anyway.
yeah.
So he doesn't have
capacity.
So he has no Duttons supporting him.
Nope.
His baby mama could care less as long as the checks keep coming, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, he's still AG, but
They just stripped him of all
the meaningful things.
Yeah.
That
He's not going to be involved in the biggest thing that on the governor's plate at this point.
which is basically a way of neutering the guy.
Yeah.
In fact, if you're an AG and you're not involved in the biggest lawsuit having to do with the state, then I'm not sure why you need to be AG anymore.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So he doesn't have market equities. He doesn't have the state pretty much, and he doesn't have the Duttons. Ruh-roh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't have anything.
Yeah. There was a lot of preview action with
Mhm.
Jamie looking frantic, and someone said the police are circling Jamie. And,
He's shredding documents.
right. All kinds of stuff.
What's happening?
So it looks like next episode there's going to be a lot of
It's going to be a bad day for Jamie.
right. That's the title.
As
the
if
next
is
episode.
it? A bad day for Jamie. Oh my
It's
gosh.
going to be raining when he goes outside from
Yeah.
his house.
What's that show? The Terrible, No Good, whatever. I loved
Oh,
that
yeah.
movie. That was a good movie.
It's going to be Jamie and the no good, horrible,
Yeah.
mixed up, upside down day or whatever it is.
What did you think of like Jamie encountering Sarah? First of all, why did he sneak up on her? Like, oh my God, that really was very creepy.
Yeah.
Holy
Well, I mean,
shit.
it is his house.
But
And she was hammering his countertop for nothing, you know.
I did notice that it didn't chip. I was like, damn, that's some good countertop. As someone who is remodeling their kitchen, I happened to notice. I was like, wait.
What brand was
What
that?
is that?
Quartz?
Yeah.
Marble?
But I don't know, when you're walking in the front door and you see your girlfriend's car out front, when you normally be like, hey, babe. Like, no, he's just standing there, all creepy and
He's
weird.
like coming up from the little basement with a load of laundry, and she's hammering away at his countertop. I mean, that was valid. She was in a trance. She was not paying attention. He could have been sitting in the room, and she may not have even seen him.
I guess so, yeah.
Oh, so incidentally, Sheila, 713 is a Houston number
Mm-hmm.
that she was dialing into the phone. So that implies that Kayce's connection guy was onto something with that. It was either MRS or EMRS. It's like
EMRS.
I think he said
it was.
EMRS.
Yeah.
Out of Houston.
out of Houston.
Out of Houston.
So
So,
713
713 is.
Yep, that's Houston.
It's the center part of Houston.
Sarah did go to a very downtown-looking building. Whether or not that was their actual headquarters, doubt it.
Maybe she flew down to Texas.
Mm-hmm. So last week we had also kind of talked about Sarah doesn't seem to know what game she's playing, with
Yeah.
the way that she was cavalier with Beth, laughing in the hallway, getting thrown
She's
to the
not
floor.
laughing now. That look on her face, she was terrified. I don't mean because she died. I meant because when she realized like what was happening, she looked absolutely terrified.
Yes.
I didn't mean because she died. I didn't mean like that. Sorry.
So
You're like, damn.
Yeah, I was like, damn. Like usually I'm
That's
the one with the
harsh.
salty stuff.
Yeah.
I did go back and rewatch episode 1 after listening to your podcast episode. Paul, when you said that it looked like she'd never done this before,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I went back and watched. I was glued to her face, and just the level of discomfort. I think 100% she is a fish out of water. And where she's at now, at the point where she's calling the number back, I don't know what she hopes to gain by calling them.
I would think reassurance that like, hey, are we good? Like, what's happening? Or is somebody at your office knocking on the door? Like, what do I do now?
Mm.
Is what I would
that's
have
fair.
been
Yeah.
asking. Like, do I run? Do I stay? I don't know.
But for her to be so blustery again with Jamie, I mean, if you are dealing with hired killers and the number they give you doesn't work, this is a bad sign.
Yeah, this is really
Yeah.
bad.
If you're out there in podcast land and you're thinking about hiring a hired killer, just know that if their number goes dead, start looking over your shoulder,
Yeah.
man.
Not
Maybe
even
you
if the
might
number
wanna
goes
leave
dead,
town.
even before that. Once the deed is done, like you better start looking over your shoulder. You
Yeah,
never
I don't
know.
know. I told Paul before we started, we were just chatting. I said, I did not expect her to die right then and there.
Hmm.
It shocked me. I like gasped. I mean, yeah, I was like, okay, something's going to happen. And maybe this investigation goes into a homicide investigation. Like we saw Jamie, he's hiding something. They're doing some sort of looking into it. Maybe she ends up dead. I did not expect it to come so quickly and immediately.
So when they were arguing, in Jamie's house, and I had this hunch Sarah was going to punch her ticket in this one. There was a moment when they're, at it, and I paused and I look at Caroline and I said, raise your hand if you've ever killed a woman.
Right?
I honestly thought the same thing.
Yeah, I thought I did, because remember we saw in the preview that he was calling 911. He was calling like, oh God, almost as if like, what have I done?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's what
Very similar to what he did with the hiker, right?
Yeah.
The reporter, hiker.
The
kayaker.
reporter, yeah.
Yeah, reporter who became a kayaker that he
She
murdered.
became a kayaker.
Yeah.
Well, all along we've been questioning whether or not at his core and his soul, whether or not he knows if Sarah likes him for real or not.
Mm-hmm.
Reacting, not killing her, and then
Yeah.
and then
Yay, Jamie.
right, and then calling her with an actual apology when he doesn't technically need her at that point, because maybe he does. If market equities is going to be at all an ally to him, maybe I guess he does still need to be on good terms with her, but it didn't seem like that was his angle. It seemed more like, no, he does actually like her and think that she likes him. And her response fooled me again. Like, did she like him? Like, you have to trust me. And she said it pretty sincerely.
Yeah.
You have to trust me, Jamie. You have to trust me. And start believing in yourself.
I think she's still trying to close the deal.
Well, yeah. I would think she'd stick around to sort of make sure he didn't fuck it up. Like, listen, here's what you're going to say when they walk up. I feel like she would stick around to, like she was telling him in the kitchen, like, think like an attorney. You weren't there. You didn't do this. You didn't transfer money. Like, be confident and act like you didn't do anything. And then they're not going to question you. So I feel like she would stick around, sort of cover her ass too, by sort of coaching him through all of this.
She's his only connection to this deal at this point, or to whatever the next steps are because of the recusal. So his insecurity is front and center, but at the same time, he's still shrewd enough to know that he needs her. And I think he's willing to step aside any of those feelings of insecurity in order to maintain some sort of control here, because it is rapidly spinning out of his control, and this is his only way to maintain it. I mean, keep in mind, he also clocked her with a full-fisted punch. She took it. I don't know. For anyone who's been in any kind of abusive relationship, that's not often something that you're going to allow. So I don't think that she's in it because she has, warm and fuzzy feelings towards him. I think she's in it because she wants to land the $6 billion deal and however much it's worth after
Which is what he said to her, too. He called her.
I think that's
out for that.
correct.
Yeah.
There was just a moment of sincerity just before she was shot that made me doubt. But overall, I think she's still on assisinment.
Yeah.
I think
sure.
she's so deep cover that she's willing to take a punch. I mean, that's really what these people are.
She's
But-
Donnie Brasco.
Yeah, she's like, she's a fugazi. I love that movie.
Fugazi.
It was a 30-second insight into the true nature of those two people. It was a very interesting character study, I thought. And we'll never really know now what her feelings are because her brains are splattered all over her Range Rover.
Well, I was kind of wondering with Jamie, I mentioned that he's untethered, and if he's not representing the state, and if there were like 10 more seasons of Yellowstone, I might expect that he tries to worm his way back into Dutton land, because who better would know how to circumvent what the state's going to do than the guy that kind of set it all up.
Right.
But I don't know if there's time for that, or at least time for it to play out that way. There might be time to propose that. But what do you think, Sheila? Do you think he's just going to run to Mexico, or or do you think he's still going to try to make good? Because his motivation has always been to protect the ranch in the way that he saw best. It just hasn't always been John's way.
Jamie without a mission is kind of scary for me. Just listening to you kind of set this up, I'm just like, oh my God, like Jamie's always been true to himself as well as being a good soldier. Like he's been a good soldier to the Duttons all along, even though he's been treated horribly and all of the things that have transpired. But at the same time, he's got nothing now. I honestly don't know. Does Jamie live past the next episode? Either by his own hand, because he's attempted this before, right? So he knows how to get to that point. But him without a purpose or him without an ally, this is a different set of rules, I think, for him. I
hadn't even considered suicide, but gosh, in a lot of ways, although that robs some viewers of what they think they've earned, maybe with Jamie being the villain, in another way, it's like, well, actually, Kayce's a good guy. He shouldn't have to kill his brother.
Yeah.
Right? And Beth, will it really complete her to kill Jamie? She might think so, but would it really do that? Because she's now this person with actual emotions.
And knowledge of the train station. I feel like that was teed up too nicely to not be of use. I really thought Beth was taking Sarah to the train station.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I feel like the despair that Jamie's in right now, and also the fact that the preview for the next episode, the cops are circling him and things like that. I don't think he has a way out. And I think he knows that Beth is going to kill him. And I think he's going to want to rob her of that pleasure.
Let's clear up why it is that the police could be circling him. And it plays back to Kayce visiting the detective in this episode when he says, make a big announcement. And he says that'll send him running. And they say something about how we'll find out who paid for it.
Make a statement. Big one.
I'll send him running for cover.
You'll never find out who did it, but you might find out who paid for it.
When they kill him.
At least you'll know.
So when it's Jamie's girlfriend that winds up dead, then it's a pretty fair assumption to start looking
like
at
big
Jamie.
Beetlejuice arrow, light up arrow,
Right.
On Sarah's Range Rover there hitting the curb.
Guilty.
Where does Jamie go from here? I've said suicide, because if the wagons circle that closely where Beth is coming for him, now the cops, because he was freaking out about his number. It was like, what does he care about his number? I'm like, oh, right, because, yeah. Not only does he have the cops after him, but now he's got his brother with all of these special forces skills that he's not going to let go rusty.
A very particular set of skills.
And whatever the firm that Sarah hired is also probably going to look to tie up loose ends.
Don't they say in a crisis situation, it's like the panic is what gets you killed?
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like he's not good in these situations. He always has someone sort of directing him what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then without that level, like, is he just going to sort of implode on himself and just not be able to handle it?
That's where the suicide comes in, I suppose. And as someone that thinks about TV writing, I know, like, say, I don't think you're a Game of Thrones person, Stef.
Sorry.
But I think Sheila might have been. And nobody loved the way these two characters went out. It was the queen and her brother.
Mm-hmm.
The brother had started out as a piece of shit and went through this heroic transformation, and then ends up going back to his sister, that was the piece of shit version of himself. And there was nobody that I've met that said, yep, that was a great ending. I'm glad that happened just like that. There's like writers kind of wanting to do writery things, but then there's like writers recognizing what their audience actually wants out of a show.
Yeah.
In that case, they wanted the brother to stay away from the sister.
Yeah.
In this case, there seems to be a lot of agreement that Jamie's better off dead.
Yeah.
It's just, how do we get him there?
Right.
is the question that needs answering.
If I had to get, like, as far as a viewer, I think I would want to see Beth kill him. Because she's been threatening it since day one.
Well, and she can't be a mother because of a choice he made for her without including her in that decision-making process.
Yeah.
Kind of in a similar sense of the truth, like how you were discussing the truth, like he can truthfully say that he wasn't involved murdering John.
Didn't actually go there.
Right.
But he's going to Jamie it up. And he's
I have seen online that some people aren't sure who killed Sarah. I don't know how you're confused out there in TV land. They showed Grant.
Yeah, making a phone call.
Making a phone call.
Didn't take long.
Right. they haven't made things overly tricky this season. The mystery is not what happened to John. It's more like what's going to happen
What's going to
to
happen?
who killed John,
Yeah.
right? That seems to be the big question.
Yeah, I absolutely think it was the, EMRS company that saw, as soon as this investigation's opened into homicide, like, okay, we're going to cover our tracks
Yeah.
for sure.
Have you been seeing any other compelling arguments the other way, Sheila?
I haven't, but like when I first watched it, I kind of wanted it to be Beth, but I didn't know if she had like the means or the time to pull this off on such short notice. I saw Grant with the phone call and he was watching the same press conference sort of as shit was unraveling. I don't know, like this conversation between Jamie and now Sarah's demise and Jamie's eventual demise that we feel is coming. I feel like Beth has become more human, and I almost said so human, but and I'm choosing the words carefully, but I feel like if Beth kills Jamie or Beth was the one to have killed Sarah, that this would have undone any of the progress that she's made. And I mean, this is like a life or death situation for her, but at the same time, the Duttons do have to live on, and I want her to be able to live with herself. I know that sounds so like, I don't know.
Well, that's the
mommy-ish.
argument. I mean, the argument for suicide is sparing the
But it's
siblings
just, I feel like
that act.
right? Like, here, Jamie, here's this gun, and just do this so that Beth doesn't have to be a complete, demon. But, I was listening to, you two could just go back and forth too about like, what does the audience want? And I feel like it's really going to be evenly split between, Team Beth killing Jamie and the Dutton legacy living on in some way, shape, or form. That, Beth dying in prison is not going to be.
No, that's not the ending we want.
No, it's not, and that's not reality for her. I mean, she would suicide herself off before Jamie would. But at the same time, I feel like she would do anything, as the spirit kind of moved her.
Maybe some other agent kills Jamie.
Jamie?
And Beth arrives after it's too late. So she is the last thing he sees with his rotten fucking eyes.
Yeah.
Gotta insert
I just
that
don't
clip, 'cause
think
that
we
was-
can stomach Kayce doing it. I just can't because, like I said before, Monica, that's not who he is. And she's built, they've sort of rebuilt this life that they've had together. She didn't like certain parts of him, and he's sort of grown and become this like family man, and they're happy together. And his family's not going to be intact, I don't think, if she knows he just straight up walked up and killed his brother.
Well, and that's I guess a reciprocal bookend
Yeah.
because he killed her brother in the first
yeah.
episode. So not killing a brother in the last one might be the right way to
This is getting very
I
Shakespearean.
know,
All of
you
this.
guys.
Oh
Oh my gosh.
Patricide,
Do you think Taylor Sheridan thinks about all of these things that we come up with, or we just have too much time on our
I think
hands?
I think we have fair points.
Yeah, I do too.
I think so.
I'm just not sure if I was. Well, this is a reason. I'm not a writer, and it's for that reason. Is that I don't know if I could come up with all of this on my own and have it tied together over 6 seasons or however many. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think we can stomach Kayce having to do it. I hope we don't have to.
But there is this really big part of me that wants Beth to just blow Jamie's head off. As someone who's watched
I
this
don't
since
know.
day one, it's just been building to this, and I just don't know if, Sheridan Universe is going to get off easy by having, I'm kind of talking myself out of my earlier argument. They're going to get out of Beth not killing Jamie. Like, it's been built up so much at this point. Like I feel like this is the season. Sorry for you Lost fans, but this is like the Lost ending. Like, if Beth doesn't do it, then where does that kind of leave all of the tension that's been building up for
I
5.5
see.
seasons?
I mean, we would expect it. We would. I don't know if we would expect it, but we would. It would make sense in the trajectory of this whole show.
And those two characters.
Yeah.
Beth killing Jamie is the only way she's going to feel avenged for all of the wrongs that have happened to her because of him.
And I think a lot of viewers would find a way to agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
If we get those two characters living on in some future version of Yellowstone, 4/6s, whatever, their final assessment might depend on her characterization afterwards to see how she treats having made herself into a killer. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We're happy to see what that looks like if they decide to give it to us sometime in our youth.
How many more episodes are there? 3?
3.
3.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
I know. So next
blowing
next
shit up.
episode, we're expecting a really terrible, no good, horrible day for Jamie. Is that the prediction?
I think that's the
Okay.
big
Go
one.
with that.
That's where we're
However
going.
it ends for him, it's going to be a horrible day.
Yeah.
Someone breaks Carter's nose.
Yeah, what's that about?
I don't
Why
know.
Carter? What does he have to do with any of this?
I don't know. Maybe it's just a horseman type
Cowboy shuffle?
Right. Just
Scuffle?
something goes awry there, but yeah, there's
Might be that horse that Lloyd was trying to break.
maybe
Guess.
yeah.
I don't know. Ripped looked pissed
I don't
about
like a
it, or
bloody Carter.
Somebody looked pissed about it. I couldn't tell who was storming through the barn.
I'm kind of wondering when this funeral is going to be.
I know.
Because they show Beth in that long skirt. I mean, that's hardly funeral stuff, but it's funeral enough for her. So I'm just wondering when that's going to happen. Is Jamie going to come to that?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but yeah, I think you're right. I think we're going to focus on Jamie's big day.
Jamie's big day.
Well, all right, team.
All right.
Looking forward to seeing what happens next on Jamie's big day and talking about it with you guys.
Yeah, this was
Me
great.
too.
So happy to have you back, Sheila.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Thanks
I'm so
for
happy to
joining
be
us,
back.
Paul.
Oh, I'm glad you could have me.
Yeah. This is Steph.
This is Paul.
And this is Sheila.
If you like this podcast, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to it on where would you do that? On iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a high rating, 5 stars, and a comment so we can learn what you like about the show and help other people find it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.
Pod Clubhouse.